My attraction to criminology or these types of films is the fact that I want to find something that the public doesn't read in the headlines.
There's nothing in our woodwork. If there is a mole, is it the CIA? That's what I think.
That's the likelihood. But we can't be certain.
Well, there's no FBI agent would ever be that kind of scumbag.
I agree, boss. It's not in our culture to betray a trust like that.
I am amazed, sometimes detached from others. I live in a land of ice and mirth and exquisite privacy.
When it came to Robert Hanssen, it was the psychological portrait of a man. Nobody was writing a portrait of him.
The prints on that plastic bag, which has been sitting in Moscow Center for the last 15 years, they belong to Bob.
Bob Hanssen?
It took the American government 22 years to catch master spy Robert Hanssen.
Freeze! Freeze exactly where you are! Do not stop!
Robert Hanssen was a loving father. He raised, 6 wonderful kids. He was an Opus Dei member in the Catholic Church, fighting communism. At the same time, he was betraying his country and giving them the most guarded secrets away.
You believe something this important comes from a spy with whom we have no personal contact?
My job is not to say niet to every possibility that comes our way.
Producer-director Lawrence Schiller needed less than a day to decide that this real-life spy story would become the subject of his next film.
It's got all of the tantalizing things, sex, violence, all of that you need to really tell the story. A great, great drama, a great story. None of it is gratuitous. It's all there because it actually happened.
Schiller first began developing his eye for telling real stories through the lens of a still camera.
Everybody look right up in here. Well, I started as a photojournalist very early in my life. I was 15 years old when I worked for United Press, traveling around the world. So journalism, getting in and finding the true story, finding out what is underneath the veneer is, where my early training came. And that's what eventually brought me to becoming a filmmaker. And from a filmmaker, I became a director, and from being a director, I wanted to control my product, so I became a producer and a director.
Schiller's first decision in making the Robert Hanssen story is a phone call to renowned author and scriptwriter Norman Mailer.
Larry Schiller called me at about the same moment that I read it in the papers. I don't know if there was even a half-hour difference. And said, would you be interested in doing a screenplay?
And of course, Norman Mailer has been a colleague of mine since 1973. We've done 5 books together, 4 movies together. He's my idol, my rabbi, as he says, I'm the one that puts the needle under his chair and gets him off of it.
Hanssen himself intrigued me. I thought, to understand a man like this is going to be a stretch. I'm going to have to push myself beyond my present limits.
Before Mailer writes a single word, he and Schiller begin an exhaustive series of interviews with many of the real people who will be depicted in their film.
A great deal was learned. His colleagues in the FBI, former colleagues.
Check this out.
He wasn't popular generally.
Hey, Digger. Digger?
He was considered a rather removed man, a dork, a dreary fellow.
Digger Odell, friendly undertaker, very funny.
Well, thank you for that information.
Por nada.
They go too far. They have no idea who they're dealing with.
And when they spoke about him, it was continuing to speak of someone who they liked very much, and then suddenly they'd come around and suddenly say, and yet he did this. You see, and they were absolutely fascinated. They were horrified and fascinated. How could someone they thought they knew so well have been so different from what they knew? So those interviews were truly fascinating.
We went all the way to Moscow and interviewed the first time, Shebershin and Chekashin, the 2 Soviet FBI counterintelligence experts that dealt with Robert Hanssen. Mike Wallace couldn't get to them. Tom Brokaw couldn't get to them. And I'm sure the name of Norman Mailer helped Larry Schiller get to them.
You're ready to give credence to a paper which discloses that the Americans have penetrated our most secure diplomatic facility in the United States? Total electronic penetration?
Ramon is saying that we will find no bugs in our embassy, yet the Americans can listen to everything. Details of the penetration of our satellite transmissions. He explains the methods used and even gives the location of the device.
As Schiller zeroes in on the man behind the spy, he interviews Hanssen's friends.
When push comes to shove, the Bureau sees the Soviet Union as an adversary, and that's all. They are there to be defeated in a contest. But Opus Dei knows communists for what they are. They're evil personified. You must come to a meeting. You'll see. You'll want to join. I really want you to come.
His priest.
Bob, sometimes you're the most spiritual person I know. Excuse me, Father.
Even his children.
Jane tells me that when you're finished with law school, you're going to apply to the FBI.
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
Well, I wouldn't recommend that.
You would?
No. Not after they let the women in.
They had not granted interviews to anybody. They were very protective, and that took some time. And eventually they visited Mailer and I. They even brought their own children. And we sat for days and days talking about their father. And it was very, very difficult for them, very traumatic.
Mom told us how your father used to treat you. I think that it's beautiful that you were never cruel to us.
I knew I had to break this cycle.
But Schiller knows that the key to unlocking the hidden side of Robert Hanssen is the spy's closest friend and sexual confidant, Jack Hoshawa.
You know, I've been asking myself why we persist in exchanging these titty photos. I mean, we're big boys now. Maybe we should stop.
Well, the first time I got him on the phone, you know, he was in Italy, I think, and he hung up on the phone on me. The second time I got him someplace on his cell phone, he hung up on me again. The third time I was able to say, look, at least let me introduce myself to you. That's all I'm asking for. Hung up on me again. I then sent him my books. I then sent him a tape of the Executioner song that Mailer and I had done together. Norman had won the Pulitzer Prize, and I had directed the film, and he had written the screenplay. Finally, Jack Hirschauer agreed to meet me in Bonn, Germany. I just got on an airplane, and I was there the next day. And I told Hirschauer, it's not going to be a pretty picture. We're going to see the warts on your face. But I have to tell you, with Larry Schiller and Norman Mailer, your part of the story is going to be put into perspective.
Mr. Hirschauer's here.
We're going to feel those, who you are.
I'm not trying to protect Bob or myself. It's his wife. This hard drive would embarrass the hell out of her.
And we're going to learn the truth of what went on.
There's nothing of intelligence value there.
So he was very, very difficult to get to, and eventually we did.
For both Schiller and Mailer, it is Hanssen's contradictions that make him so compelling.
He betrayed everyone he loved. Doesn't mean he didn't love them. It meant that when he loved them, he had to betray them. He loved America.
I accept the obligation to consider the information coming into my knowledge as a sacred trust. And any direct or indirect disclosure by me of any of this information, I understand, can cause irreparable damage to the United States.
I do.
He had to betray America. He didn't love the FBI, but he was part of it, was very proud of the FBI, had to betray the FBI.
I am the one they want, and they don't have a clue.
Had to betray his colleagues in the FBI.
Read through these defective summaries, see if you can find anything.
Once I've read these, I'll write a top-secret report, one copy to Mike, top secret, one copy to my KGB drop. Both sides will feel enriched.
Had to betray his church.
I'm never going near them again. That's my vow to God.
Vow to God is binding. I can accept such a vow.
Had to betray his family.
Bob, you're not.
Absolutely not. I made a vow.
The keynote to every one of his actions is betrayal. And it was as if betrayal was what he needed, was the serum that kept him alive. Betrayal was what kept him in balance. He's the most extraordinary man. Of all the characters I think I've dealt with in my writing life, I find him the most exceptional, the most extraordinary, the most difficult to understand, and yet the most interesting.
Fish and chips.
Little malt vinegar.
Hamburgers.
In honor of the Brits. You know they hit a gold mine today. One of the major archivists in the KGB defected to them. Now there's a source who's going to have hundreds, maybe thousands of pieces of information. It's an analyst's dream.
Just think about all the spies, all the nightmares they'll have.
After 9 solid months of interviews, enough to later generate a book, Schiller finally feels they have enough raw material for Mailer's screenplay.
This film is very, very unique because we went from original journalism to film, and that's something that not very many people are willing to do. And then when we finished the screenplay, we showed it again to Jack Hirschauer. We showed it to Hanssen's children. We weren't afraid. It wasn't like a hit and run, and some of them made some very constructive comments.
The script was also sent to government agencies who could help Schiller nail down the locations needed to make the film.
When you get to, who's going to cooperate and who's not going to cooperate in a film like this, it's very, very funny. You find a lack of cooperation in places where you thought you'd have no problem at all. Oh, you can't shoot in Lafayette Park because that's owned by the Secret Service. Oh, but you could shoot 20 feet into the street because that's owned by the city, and the city will give you a permit. You can't shoot on this sidewalk because it's too close to the White House, but you can shoot on the White House grounds because that belongs to somebody else.
Did anybody tell the president that we're here, if you'd like to come out?
No, in Moscow, we were allowed to shoot, in the Kremlin, at the Politburo offices, at the military academy. We shot in the cell block in the prison right where the first head of the KGB was incarcerated and executed himself.
They will shoot around the globe, but the most important and difficult location is the hallowed halls of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
They hadn't allowed an entertainment company to shoot there in over 20 years. And they came back and said, well, we only have one problem. We have a big security thing here, and it's very, very difficult for us to let you shoot. But of course, there are very few people working on Saturdays. So lo and behold, we were invited and we shot at the FBI facilities in Washington, D.C., which just amazed everybody.
This is actually the labyrinth of the FBI.
Oscar-winning actor William Hurt was Schiller's first and only choice to play Robert Hanssen.
I'm very, very fortunate to have been able to work with William Hurt, an actor of great depth and understanding, an intelligent man. An actor like Hurt plays the role as an innocent man because if he does feel guilt, he has a way of rationalizing it.
I am happy only when I am working. At my best for both sides at once. Let the cops get better and the cooks get better. Then you have an interesting society.
Action! 2 full weeks of rehearsal helped the actors prepare for their roles. Among them, Mary Louise Parker as Bonnie Hanssen.
Thought you'd never want to talk to us again.
What you want to do is bring their natural self into your character, into your film.
Gifts? You call these filthy, dirty things gifts?
You see, you don't want an actor to act out a role in a film like this. You want an actor to live the role. You want the actor to become the character.
You and your money, get out of our house. Fathead!
So, many times I had disagreements with Mary Louise off the screen, off the set. And, I discovered after 3 days, I didn't have a disagreement with her. She was just Bonnie Hanssen.
You will write your father and tell him that if he continues to insult you in front of your children, he's not to visit here again.
I thought you said that to him already.
Are you going to write?
You know what you're asking.
It has to be done.
She was living it in the hotel room. She was living it at lunch. She was living it every moment.
Turn around.
Huh? What's she doing? I don't know.
Turn around. Turn around.
And the same thing with William. They became the characters for those 10 weeks we made the film. And that's what I think is extraordinary. I mean, they were, this couple that was madly in love.
I'm beginning to feel half comfortable around him.
He's much more impressed by you than he wants to allow.
That's your doing.
Enjoying their sex, raising their children.
You have to grow up living your life as an apostle for God. You can't watch silly TV shows.
And working for the church while spying for the Soviet Union.
Larry Schiller hopes that all of the hard work and research will pay off in a film that says as much about human nature as it does about espionage.
And I don't even know if my film is a spy movie. I think my film is more a psychological portrait. It's about lust and sex and love and everything else, love of country, love of family. It's like a roller coaster going through Robert Hanssen's life.
Overweening vanity, feeling myself equal to God. Bestowing good on both sides, but it's a nightmare of illusions for anyone seeking the truth, dodging between the problems and the principles. The price is high. But we can't be certain.
Well, there's no FBI agent would ever be that kind of scumbag.
I agree, boss. It's not in our culture to betray a trust like that.
I am amazed, sometimes detached from others.
I sat in the Moscow Center for the last 15 years. They belong to Bob.
Bob Hanssen?
It took the American government 22 years to catch master spy Robert Hanssen.
Freeze! Freeze exactly where you are! Do not stop!
Robert Hanssen was a loving father. He raised, 6 wonderful kids. He was an Opus Dei member in the Catholic Church.
I live in a land of ice and mirth and exquisite privacy.
When it came to Robert Hanssen, it was the psychological portrait of a man. Nobody was writing a portrait of him.
The prints on that plastic bag, which has been...
My attraction to criminology or these types of films is the fact that I want to find something that the public doesn't read in the headlines.
There's nothing in our woodwork. If there is a mole, is it the CIA? That's what I think.
That's the likelihood.